Here is a number that will stay with you, 100. That is the percentage of people who will lose someone they love. Not most. Every single one. And yet 9 out of 10 of us carry that grief alone, as if something is wrong with us, for hurting this deeply. The Buddha saw 3 truths hidden inside loss that most people never find. Find them, and the unbearable weight doesn't disappear, it transforms into something you never expected. About 2,500 years ago, in a small kingdom in northern India, a young man grew up inside a palace. The world beyond the walls held wide open skies, dusty roads, and the everyday lives of ordinary people. But the young man knew none of it. The palace was his entire world. Gardens full of flowers, fine silk clothing, beautiful music drifting through the halls. His father, the king, wanted his son to know nothing of suffering, as if keeping it hidden could make it disappear. One spring day, the young man asked to go outside. His father panicked, ordering servants to clear the roads of anyone who was old or sick. But reality, it turns out, cannot be hidden forever. On that day, the prince saw an old man, hunched and trembling by the roadside, someone the servants had missed. He had never seen a human body worn down by time, and he sat in his chariot, unable to move, unable to speak. He had been handed a perfect world, and in a single moment, it cracked open. That evening he returned to the palace, and the flowers were the same, the silk was the same, the music still drifted through the halls, but he could no longer hear it the way he once had. Something had shifted, the way a bone never quite sits the same after it breaks. The young man's name was Siddhartha, the one who would later become the Buddha. The day he passed through the palace gates, he rode in a carriage alongside his attendant Chana. For the first time he saw the world outside, voices of people calling out, the smell of earth and dust, the lively bustle of the marketplace. His eyes were wide with wonder, but a little further down the road, a man sat hunched at the side of the path. His back was bent low, his skin carved with countless wrinkles, his hands cracked like the roots of an old tree. He moved one slow step at a time, leaning heavily on a cane. Siddhartha stopped the carriage. "Who is that man? Why is his body bent like that?" Chana paused before answering. "My prince, that is an old man. With time, every person becomes like him. You, me, no one is spared." Siddhartha stared in silence. Inside the palace, there had been no old people. His father had kept them away. What he was seeing felt impossible, and yet Chana's words carried no trace of a lie. They traveled on. This time a figure lay at the edge of the road, body burning with heat, moaning softly. People walked past, careful to look away. What has happened to that person? They have fallen ill. Sickness comes for everyone, my prince. For you, and for me. Something heavy began to settle in Siddhartha's chest. But there was still more to come. At the edge of the town, a small crowd had gathered. Several people carried a wooden stretcher, moving slowly and in silence. On it lay a figure who did not move at all. Those around them wept quietly, hands pressed together, voices low. "Chana, why does that person not move?" Chana answered in a low, careful voice. "They have died, my prince. Their life has ended. Every person, whether a king or a beggar, will one day become still like that. None of us can escape it." Siddhartha sat motionless in the carriage for a long moment. Old age, sickness, death. 3 realities he had never seen, all appearing before him in the space of a single day. Then, on the way home, someone else appeared. A wandering monk. He wore thin, simple robes. His head was shaved. He walked with quiet, unhurried steps. And yet his face held a kind of stillness, a peacefulness that seemed impossible in a world that had just shown Siddhartha so much pain. "Who is that man?" "A monk who has renounced the world, my prince. He walks seeking a way to be free from the suffering of old age and death." Siddhartha watched the monk's figure until it disappeared from sight. That evening the lavish food went untasted. The music meant nothing. All he could see were those 4 moments, the old man, the sick man, the one who had died, and the monk who had walked through it all with a face full of peace. Those 4 encounters pressed themselves deep into the young man's heart, and they would not let go. He lay awake in his chamber while the palace slept around him, the laughter of dancers still drifting faintly through the walls. He looked at his own hand in the darkness, smooth, young, unbroken, and for the first time understood that it would not always be so. The monk's quiet face returned to him again and again, like a lamp seen from far across the water. In Buddhism, this story is known as the 4 Sights, the journey through 4 gates, where a young man met 4 truths about being alive: old age, sickness, death, and a wandering monk. But let's pause here for a moment and ask a simple question. Why was Siddhartha so shattered by what he saw? For him, growing up inside the palace walls, old age and sickness and death simply didn't exist. They had always been there, of course, but because he couldn't see them, they felt unreal. So when he finally came face to face with them, it was as if his entire world had been turned upside down in a single afternoon. And that, I think, is where the first important truth lives. We don't find it hard to feel the weight of life because life is somehow lightweight. We find it hard because we've quietly come to believe that life will simply always be there. We assume we'll wake up tomorrow. We assume the people we love will still be with us next year. We tell ourselves, I'm still young, I won't get sick. Death is something that happens much, much later. And it's only when that assumption cracks, when a doctor's report comes back wrong, or we notice our parent has suddenly grown old, that we feel it, the true weight of a life. Nothing about life itself has changed in that moment. What has changed is the way we were looking at it. We don't suffer because life exists. We suffer because we clutch life as if it's something that will always stay in our hands, without ever noticing how tightly we're holding on. There's a second truth here too. Most of us feel somewhere deep down that this life belongs to us, but does it really? None of us chose to be born. We arrived in this world without deciding to. We were kept alive by air, by water, by food, by the hands of people who cared for us. Life, in this sense, is something we were given, held up by countless connections we didn't arrange. When we say, my life, already inside those words are our parents' lives, our ancestors' lives, the gifts of the earth, the presence of everyone who has ever crossed our path. When we hold life as if it belongs only to us, it starts to feel confined. But life was never meant to be held alone. It lives inside connection. The old man Siddhartha saw that day, the sick man, the one being carried away in silence. Each of them had once been deeply loved. Each had loved someone in return, and now they were aging, suffering, fading. When Siddhartha faced that truth directly, what rose in him wasn't simply fear, it was a question, quiet but unshakable. What is life really? And what does it mean to actually live one? That question became the flame that would light his entire journey. And perhaps that's where many of us find ourselves too. Not at a palace gate, but standing in a hospital corridor, or sitting alone at a kitchen table after everyone else has gone home. Holding a question we don't yet have words for. The question itself is the beginning. Siddhartha didn't leave the palace because he had found an answer. He left because he was finally brave enough to stay with the not knowing. This story of the 4 Sights isn't just about a prince from long ago. All of us have our own version of that palace. Think about the first kind of moment, when you're caught up in a busy life. Work, parenting, deadlines, the demands of other people. There's often no room left to think about life itself. You're moving. That feels like enough. Just having a body in motion becomes your proof that everything is fine. But then one day, a health check comes back with a number that shouldn't be there. Or you visit your parents after months away and notice, suddenly, quietly, that they've become old. And in that moment, something in you stops. Like Siddhartha stepping through the gate, you think, I was treating life as though it would always just be there. That's not something to feel ashamed of. We can only live inside what we can see. But when we let even a small part of that palace wall come down, the view changes. Think about the second kind of moment. Many people carry the memory of losing someone they loved. Maybe it came without warning. Maybe it came after a long illness. Either way, so many people are left holding the same quiet ache. I wish I had spent more time with them. I wish I had said what I meant to say. Why do we feel that way? Because we love them inside an assumption. The assumption that they would always be there. When life felt permanent, it was easy to push the important things to tomorrow, later, whenever. There's still time. But life has an ending. The death Siddhartha witnessed on that road wasn't a tragedy reserved for someone else. It was simply the quiet, inevitable truth, told without cruelty, told plainly. Think about the third kind of moment. If you're someone who has started to feel the changes in your own body, things you could once do that you can no longer do, a growing unfamiliarity with your own reflection, there's often a particular kind of grief in that, a sense of losing something you thought was yours to keep. Hidden inside that grief is a belief that yesterday's version of you should still be here today. But life has always been in motion. Aging is not just loss, it is proof that something has been alive and moving all this time. The monk Siddhartha passed on his way home that day, the one walking calmly through a world full of suffering, wasn't peaceful because he had escaped reality. He was peaceful because he had stopped fighting it. He saw life clearly, and in that clarity, something in him had settled. The weight of life isn't something heavy that we have to carry. It's what life feels like when we stop pretending it weighs nothing. That monk didn't have a lighter life than anyone else. He had simply put down the story he'd been telling himself about how life was supposed to go. And there is something freeing in that. Not the freedom of having no problems, but the freedom of a person who has finally stopped being surprised by rain. So what can we actually do, starting today? Just one thing. Tonight, before you fall asleep, close your eyes for 1 minute. Breathe slowly and gently check in with yourself, like this. Today, this body moved. Today I exchanged words with someone. Today I put food in my mouth. Today I breathed. Nothing grand, nothing special. Just quietly noticing the small movements of life that happened today, one by one. This is connected to something the Buddha encouraged his students to practice, what is called right mindfulness, the art of bringing your attention back to this moment, right here, right now. When the mind drifts into the past or races toward the future, gently, without force, returning it to the present. You don't need to do it perfectly. 1 minute before sleep is enough. Just this. Today there was life. Simple confirming that quietly to yourself. I won't promise this will change everything. Everyone is different. But there may come a moment, slowly, without fanfare, when something you had always taken for granted begins to feel a little different, a little more present, a little more real. It won't be dramatic. It might feel like almost nothing at all. A small, quiet shift. But that small shift might change the words you choose tomorrow when you speak to someone you love. The 4 truths Siddhartha met on the road that day, revisited in 1 quiet minute before sleep. A little more care for the life that is here. That's all it is. And perhaps one morning, you will lift a cup of warm tea to your lips and pause. Not because anything reminded you to, but because something in you simply stopped and noticed. That is enough. That is more than enough. And perhaps in that pause, you will see the hands that made the tea, or remember the person who once taught you how to hold a cup. Small threads pulling gently. This is how compassion begins. Not in grand gestures, but in a single moment when we forget to rush. The things you treat as certain right now, the people around you, the body that carries you, the simple fact of tomorrow. If one of those things were to disappear without warning, how would you spend today? There's no need to answer right away. Just let the question sit somewhere in your chest for a little while. A farmer I once knew would pause each morning before stepping into his fields, resting his hand briefly on the wooden gate. Not in prayer, not in ritual, just in recognition that the gate was still there, that his hands were still there, that the morning had come at all. He never explained why he did it, but I noticed he was never in a hurry to leave when evening came. Years passed and I watched others rush past that same gate without a glance, already somewhere else in their minds, before their feet had even touched the soil. They were not bad people. They were simply saving their tenderness for a moment that always seemed just ahead of them. And so the gate stood, patient as ever, holding its small witness, whether anyone stopped or not. The weight of life becomes clearest when we sit with its ending. And we explored that very question in a previous teaching, looking at what truly changes when we hold our mortality close. You'll find a link waiting in the description below. Siddhartha did not look away from what he saw on that road: old age, sickness, death. and a monk who walked through all of it with a quiet, steady face. He didn't leave the palace to escape. He left because he wanted to know, really know, what life was made of, and he wanted to walk toward whatever lay on the other side of that question. At the end of that long journey, Siddhartha became the Buddha. But before any of that, before the teaching, before the awakening, he simply looked. He let himself see the weight of a life with his own eyes, and that was where everything began. Life is not light, but in the busyness of our days, it's easy to lose the feeling of it. When we live too long inside our own version of the palace, the world outside the walls stops feeling real. The time you spent here today, that is part of your life too. The voice you heard, the color of the sky you noticed, the moment you paused and let yourself think. All of it is small evidence that something is alive and moving in you. Maybe you don't need to be reminded of the weight of life, but if you find yourself, just once in a while, stopping to notice that you're breathing, that there is air, that this moment is here, something may shift. Quietly, without you even quite knowing when it happened. Thank you for being here, and for the life you carry. May it be that, like Siddhartha on that road, you let yourself see what is actually in front of you, the tired face of a stranger, the meal that someone prepared with their hands, the small kindnesses that pass between people without a word. Not to be burdened by it, but to be awake to it. That is already a kind of practice. And perhaps that is enough, not to solve the weight, but to feel it honestly, the way you might hold a stone in your palm and simply notice that it is real. Pause. May today's words quietly take root within you. One story a day. In a week your words will change. In a month your eyes will change. In a year, the same world will look completely different.